then from there I think I'll probably go into a little bit of reading a little bit from the new book. I think probably how I got started writing was because I've always been a reader. I've been a very passionate reader. Most people know me. I've always had a book in my hand, it felt like, and every night I'm reading. Lots of Robert Ludlum through my life, Hardy Boyce as a kid, lots of Stephen King, John Sanford. You saw my bookshelf at home, you'd see nothing but John Sanford almost up there. And then I got interested in writing at our school newspaper back high school. I remember still sitting at the old-fashioned typewriter and trying to make up some stories even. It never got printed in that, but just I had that itch to start writing some creative stuff. And then I was writing for work, advertising. I've been an advertising copywriter, writing campaigns, most recently for Securing Financial. If you drive down through St. Paul, you'll see their banners that say, "Be you with us." That was my campaign. So, I feel good about that. But being a reader, kind of always had that itch to write something, right? I was at a New Year's party, and there was a State Patrol investigator there, and she was telling these amazing stories of all these things that happened out on the highways and people she'd deal with. And I remember thinking, I could write a book about this. Had a glass of champagne later, like, maybe I could. Probably the third glass, I'm like, I'm gonna do this. So I asked her if she'd be willing to meet a different time for coffee, and so I could pick her brain. So we did that, and I was jotting down notes furiously, and she set up a ride-along with a State Patrol officer, and I had a buddy that also became State Patrol up by Moose Lake area. So he took me out one night, and we were driving like 120 miles an hour down 35, and pulling on the dashboard. It's different when you're behind the wheel than when you're in the other seat, I'll tell you that. And 120 miles an hour or so, what seems like a straight road doesn't feel very straight at that speed. So after that, I wrote a book, and it was so much fun. And as soon as I'm finishing that one, I had this idea for another one. And it was about the officer that discovers a time travel device and goes back to 1940 Chicago. He's been fighting gangs in St. Paul, and was fighting gangsters back in old Chicago. Neither of those two ever got published. Like many authors, you haven't found your voice, you haven't just really found that niche. And then right after I was finishing up the last one, I wanted to write a book that my daughter and her friends might be able to read. So in fact, the title character, Abby, so I wanted we always had ghosts in common and spooky stuff, so I wrote one there. And then from there I went into Killer Blonde, and then I've been just nonstop writing ever since. A lot of people want to know kind of how you find your publisher, how you get there, your path to publication. For me, it was a Twitter pitch contest called Pit Mad, short for Pitch Madness. So those how many characters, you tell your story, and if an agent likes it, then that means they want you to submit the materials to that literary agent. But my like came from the acquisitions editor for my publisher. And actually I have the tweet right here. It's from March 7th, 2019. Someone is killing virtually identical women in Minnesota. As it becomes a cat and mouse game between the killer and the police, investigator Kay Dawkins begins to realize he's the mouse. So I sent the novel in, the manuscript. She said, this is really good, but you've got a few issues with past and present tense. So if you could take another editing pass through that one, I'd really appreciate it. So I said, sure, but in the meantime, would you look at this book, first in the Abbey book? 3 days later, I get an email back from her that says, I love it, with 4 exclamation points. Can I send you a publishing contract? I'm like, well, sure. So that was kind of the start right there. And then, of course, I published the Killer Blonde one. Abnormally Abby started out as Ghost Girl, but they already had a book called Dead Girl, and they had another similar title. So I said, "Can you come up with a new title?" And Abnormally Abby embrace the alliteration here. You want to hear a little bit from
Yes.
Killer Smile?
Yes.
All right. It was September in Minnesota. The humidity had subsided while the warm weather lingered. The mosquitoes had gone to wherever mosquitoes go when they're not biting. Kids were back in school. Life was good, yet Cade's nagging feeling lingered. Something was in the air. In his line of work, those feelings could be the difference between life and death. Sure, the tingle on the back of his neck could be nothing more than nerves, or likely too much coffee, but they also could mean survival. He supposed that feeling had something to do with the mysterious meeting he'd been summoned to join at the University of Minnesota. Mysterious only because he didn't know the people he was meeting or why they were asking for him. Curiosity as much as anything brought him to the massive campus this autumn evening. Cade dropped his truck behind the Walter Library, tossing a State Patrol official vehicle card on the dashboard, and headed out. The sun had gone down over an hour ago and the breeze had picked up, rippling Cade's windbreaker. He passed a group of students locked into a passionate debate. One of them argued that all first-year students should be taught meditation to reduce stress on campus. The other earnestly countered that that's what beer was for. As he moved over to give them room on the sidewalk, Cade got a nod from the beer guy and a look of panic from one of the girls who noticed his weapon. "It's all right," he said as he pulled his jacket back over his holster. "I'm a cop." Working for the Minnesota State Patrol, Cade Dawkins was one of two full-time plainclothes investigators out of the East Metro Division in the Twin Cities. The 31-year-old had already spent 9 years in law enforcement and was a recent transplant, having previously been with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. At the patrol, he'd made his reputation with a once-in-a-lifetime case. "He doesn't look like any cop I've seen," one of the young women behind him whispered loud enough for him to hear. "He looks like he should be working at Starbucks, if you ask me." "Amber, you're so bad. Baristas don't carry guns. They should. I'd tip them better if they did." Cade turned around at this and caught the young woman glancing back and couldn't help but smile. The library's entrance was just ahead and he checked his watch. On time. He stopped on the front steps. He'd been instructed to wait at the door as the building was secured by keycard. Though it had been renovated, Cade guessed the library is one of the oldest buildings on campus. He'd visited the U a few times over the years but didn't know the campus well. Cade's college days were spent across the river at Hamlin University, where he focused on law enforcement, playing soccer, and parties. Possibly not in that order. An older man stepped out and glanced at him. "Are you Cade Dawkins?" "You must be," he laughed. It was the sort of laugh that encouraged other people to join him. No one else would wait outside. "Come on in," he said with a wave. Inside, the two men shook hands. "I'm Darius Crocker, professor of computer science. I appreciate you coming." Cade studied the man. Early 40s, black man, looked to be in good shape once but had gone soft in the middle. Maybe a former tackle or lineman based on his build. For someone used to the dark arts of football, he had kind eyes. "To tell you the truth, I'm not sure why I'm here," Cade shrugged. "Yet here I am." "I appreciate that. Let's head down to the lab where we can talk. I'll explain everything." Crocker led the way to an elevator. After the doors opened and both men stepped inside, the doors groaned shut. Crocker pushed the button for the basement and the ancient elevator shuddered and lowered. Neither man said anything for an awkward moment while they rode. When the doors opened again, both men stepped out into what looked to be an unused sub-basement. He followed Crocker down the dimly lit hallway that closed in on them as the sideline debris of boxes and dusty furniture grew by the step. This was where discarded university furnishings came to die. "Is this where you bring all your victims?" Cade asked, genuinely curious. Crocker looked as if he was going to say something, but then pointed at him and grinned. They stepped outside a metal door where a new-looking, dust-free security box was mounted on the adjacent wall. "You take your security seriously," Cade said as Crocker punched a code into the keypad. He paused for a moment after pushing the door open, looking to Cade for a reaction, and wasn't disappointed. "Holy shit, will you look at this place?" The room was larger than expected and filled with state-of-the-art computer gear. Racks of computers and networking equipment lined the walls. The cables were all maroon and gold for some reason. LED lights blinked and computers hummed. A dozen workstations with multiple monitors were set up around the space, and the lone man sat at a wooden table in the middle of the room. He looked like he was born in the same decade as Crocker. "That was my reaction as well," the man said as he leaned back and smiled. "This looks like something NASA should be using for the next shuttle launch, yet you're hiding this command center in the sub-basement?" Cade asked. Crocker nodded. "I wanted a place off the beaten path. When I asked around with the facilities people, they mentioned this place. It was perfect." So over the summer, I cleaned it up and hauled out a shit ton of junk. I personally ran the data lines here. I wanted it done right. Brought down the equipment piece by piece, firewalls, intrusion detection, mass storage systems, and of course an advanced AI machine learning system that actually detects interesting things. And as you saw, I secured the entrance with state-of-the-art security. It's my sanctuary. Crocker gestured to the man at the table. This is Professor Clement Tubbs, chair of the psychology department, an old friend. Tubbs, like his colleague, was a 40-something black man with a touch of gray in his hair. His eyes lit up as he smiled. I'm not that old, Tubbs said in what Cade guessed was a regular refrain between the two colleagues. There was an ease about them that spoke of friendship and shared laughter. The professor's grip was firm when they shook. Wait, you two are Crocker and Tubbs, like in Miami Vice? Cade laughed. Crocker smiled and said, it was Crockett and Tubbs, but yeah, we've heard it before. That didn't stop us from being friends, though, or working together on this. Crocker looked at his friend, his expression turning serious. Maybe I should tell you what this is. Curiosity getting the better of him, Cade leaned forward and nodded. Maybe you should. Crocker took the chair next to Tubbs. There was an awkward pause, and Crocker cleared his throat. I'm the chair of the computer science department here at the university. With so many hackers out there looking to cause trouble, computer security has become vital. From individuals to nation states, hackers are responsible for service disruptions, data and identity theft, trade secret poaching, and stolen secrets that compromise leaders. Many of those hacked secrets end up in one place where they're sold and traded. The dark web, Cade said. He'd heard of it, but so far had no experience with it. The dark web was something from the CSI shows and thriller movies. You got it, Crocker said. The dark web is a place to distribute and sell malware. And since the computer security is vital to what we teach, your understanding what threats are out there makes a huge difference. If you want something illegal, you can find it on the dark web. Even if you want to arrange a murder for hire or get a rocket launcher, it's probably there. This is interesting, Cade said, but I'm guessing there's a connection to the dark web that prompted you to call me. He let his words hang there as he watched the two university professors. There was an exchange of glances, and Cade had that feeling again. Something was in the air. Crocker leaned forward. Yes, and we appreciate your patience while we got you up to speed. He took another sip and set the bottle back on the table, running his finger along the side. He opened a folder and slid a piece of paper across the table. But first, I need you to sign this NDA. He held out a pen. What do you think I'm going to disclose? Crocker laughed. Good try, but I can't tell you what you could disclose until you sign the paper. Cade grabbed a pen. Fine, I'm too curious to not sign it. He scribbled something that even he couldn't decipher when he looked at it. Crocker slipped the document into the folder without glancing at it. Thank you. In my research, I came upon a dark website called Orbiting Cortex. He hesitated as he looked at Cade for reaction, but continued when he didn't get one. At first, I didn't realize the name meant something. It felt kind of esoteric to me. Tubbs spoke up. Since this is my area, I'll explain. The name is a nod to the orbital cortex, the area believed to be involved with ethical behavior, moral decision-making, and impulse control. People with low activity in the orbital cortex are either free-wheeling types or sociopaths, he said. Without the orbital cortex doing its job, you have unchecked rage, violence, eating, sex, and drinking. Serial killers have often been found to have little to no orbital cortex activity. Cade leaned forward. The conversation suddenly became a lot more interesting. Crocker continued, Orbiting Cortex is a site for serial killers, made up of serial killers. Really? Crocker nodded. Really? I thought it was odd, too, as a typical serial killer is more of a lone wolf. You never hear of them working together. That's why I went to visit my friend here, Clement, but he set me straight. Tubbs nodded. While serial killers typically don't work together, they're often quite social. That's why they're able to blend into society so seamless and can hide in plain sight. These killers, they could be right in front of you and you never know. When Cade glanced at Crocker sitting in front of him, the professor held up his hands. Not me, I'm way too sweet. Ask my wife. He let out a loud belly laugh, and Cade decided he liked the man. Anyway, Crocker continued, I found the site and brought in my colleague here. What did you find? Cade was curious where this was going. Crocker took a slow, deep breath and shook his head. It was seriously disturbing. The users shared exploits, bragged, and even challenged one another. It was disgusting stuff, the stuff of nightmares. This is why we contacted you. Crocker held Cade's gaze. We're guessing that since you stopped the blonde killer a few months back, you may have some practical knowledge about catching these killers. A vision of a blade slicing through the air, blood, lots of it, not something Cade wanted to face again. The blonde killer had been a serial killer, preying on nearly identical blonde women in the Twin Cities. Cade worked the case as an investigator with the Minnesota State Patrol when several dead women were found as one-car fatalities. When it became clear it was the work of a serial murderer, the governor put Cade on the case, and his work led to the discovery that the killer was on the governor's own staff. It came down to a bloody conclusion, made worse by not all the blood being from the killer. I've caught just the one, though. That doesn't make me an expert by any stretch of the imagination. Cade paused as he studied the men. Neither said anything. Are you wanting me to travel around the country looking for these killers? This feels more like a federal case, to be honest. As interesting as this is, I don't think it involves me. He stood up, already thinking about the long drive back home to Stillwater. Glances were exchanged between the university professors. There was clearly more to the story than they'd let on so far. Cade's frustration threatened to overcome his good manners, but he held it in check. It doesn't involve me, does it? But there was that feeling again. Crocker cleared his throat. Actually, it does. After you caught the blonde killer, there was significant discussion on the orbiting cortex site. They were incredibly intrigued by the cat and mouse games that went on between you and the killer. Though there was a consensus that the blonde killer wasn't as intelligent as he thought he was, and they considered you a worthy opponent. A chill ran down Cade's back. He didn't think it was from the air conditioning. Tubbs leaned forward, concern written on his face. Remember we said the killers challenged each other on the site? Cade nodded. Goosebumps joined the shivers as he sat back down. A new challenge was issued, Tubbs said. A challenge that poked the beehive and got them all buzzing. He paused. Damn it, Tubbs, what was the challenge? Staring directly into Cade's eyes, Tubbs looked like a man with bad news. The challenge was to come here to Minnesota, kill here, and outsmart the man who caught the blonde killer. We don't know if it means a single killer or several, but we know we had to warn you. But it might be none, too. However, if they do come, Crocker said evenly, they're coming for you. So when I started this book, I had it going in a completely different direction. He was working extensively with the Minneapolis police, and that's when the George Floyd thing happened. And I just kind of pushed it aside. I wasn't quite sure where to go with it. And then one day I'm on the treadmill, and this idea, this chapter right there came to me, and it gave me goosebumps. And generally in life, if you get goosebumps, you need to write about it. So that's where that one came. It's been a fun story to write. One of the things that I like to do when I'm writing, especially these kind of books, Killer Blonde and this one, a lot of research. So like I said, I've done ride-alongs with the State Patrol. I've gone with the St. Paul Police as well. I went to the guy that was the head of security for Jesse Ventura and Tim Pawlenty, because State Patrol provides all the security for the governor, not only just his mansion, but anywhere the governor is going to make an appearance, there's an advance team that goes out, scopes it all out, looks for exits, any possible issues. And so I spent a couple hours drinking beers on his back porch and getting all that. I met with the patrol's accident reconstruction specialist, a couple hours at a Caribou one day, and so all of that has found its way into the books. And so that's been really interesting, all that research. So I told you about Abnormally Abby. One thing that with that book as well, I learned that was one of the first ones for publication. And when I first started, you want to start like, hi, my name is Abby, and I've done this and this and this, and tell that whole story. You kind of fill in that backstory, but you quickly realize that that's not where readers want to start the book. They want to start as late into the story as they can. So right away you've got some action, you've got something that's going to grab them. In this case, grab by the throat and shake them and hold them for a little bit. And then you just kind of pepper in that backstory as needed. And it just does flow a lot better that way. And that's just one of those things you learn as you're going through. So Class Clown came out as well. That was a sequel to Abnormally Abby. Probably wondering why clowns. If you've read it, you might understand. At first I was thinking my title at that point was going to be Scary Clowns. Just let's get that out there right away. But I wanted to stay with the alliteration, so it became Class Clown, which is actually a better title when I come down to it. And so that's been fun. And the third in that series is called Spook Squad, and that's coming out in October from Immortal Works. So that's the third one in the series, and there's a whole subplot in that one where Twin Cities Live, their resident ghost hunter has retired, and so they made a contest out of coming up with a new ghost hunter, basically. So they were going to make it a contest and have different people or groups do it. So Abby's friends convinced her that, well, you should be doing this. So there's that subplot that runs through. I'm hoping to land me on Twin Cities Live someday. So some of the questions that I usually get is like, how often do you write as a writer? How often do I write?
Every day.
Every day.
Easy answer.
Stephen King wrote that in his book on writing. He says, you know, I tell people I write every day except for Christmas and my birthday. He said, but honestly, I write on those days too. I just didn't want to sound weird. I tie mine in probably to coffee, and I do want coffee every day, so it just works. And it seems to just put my mind into a place where I can start writing right away and then be creative that way. I think I'm happier for doing this every day. Some writers, as their process goes, when they think they're going to write a book, they'll totally outline this book, come up with the whole thing. Others we'd call them pantsers. They kind of write by the seat of their pants, they got an idea, but then think, well, what should happen next? Okay, maybe I know where this is kind of going, but let's figure out as I go along. We start in chapter, okay, what should happen here? Okay, just kind of write it that way. And I've actually done it both ways. As mentioned, I saw Allan speak before, and he was with another author, and she was a pantser and he's a plotter, and he's like, 2,500 words every day, because I know what I'm going to write. And he just kept coming back to them. 2,500 words. So then I decided, well, maybe I should be plotting too. So I've done it both ways. The one I've worked on most recently is a rom-com. And I've been plotting that one out. And it's actually been working really well for me. Speaking of that, do you want to hear a little bit of that?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a different one. I'm calling it Collision Course or Possibly Different Worlds. Think of that, how you've got one part of your life, maybe your job, and you see people around your job, but then you see that same person from that place somewhere else, so your two worlds are kind of colliding. So maybe that Collision Course is a good title.
I call it a crossover episode.
I like that.
There you go. So in this one, I've got two characters, Liam and Celia. They both work for the same ad agency. And so every chapter is Liam at work, Celia at work. Liam at play, Celia at play. And it just keeps rotating through there. So you get different viewpoints throughout. So I'll just start. This is Liam at work. The glass doors slide open, and immediately the pageantry and majesty of Glamdow Wonderland are on full display. Vivid hues of pink, purple, and fuchsia ripped from the dolls of childhood are the palette used to create the advertising agency's opening statement. The paneled walls, tiled floor, and beam ceiling are all in colors that would feel right at home in a candy store or a Malibu dream house. Modern furniture that looks more ornamental than functional, don't even think of taking a seat, dot the Barbie-inspired landscape. Wall-mounted monitors display reels of the agency's award-winning creative to a driving beat worthy of a dance club. Think Friday night, quarter to midnight, 3 martinis in vibes, and you're mostly there. Depending on who you ask, the swirling graphics projected on the walls gave a sense of being underwater or flying through clouds of cotton candy. Deborah, the director of First Impressions, doesn't look up because she's already there smiling, having stepped off from her sweeping command center. Her pink heels have a bow on them. She greets with a cheery hello. Welcome to Glamdow Wonderland. You are going to love it here. This is often when first or second time visitors begin to feel something that staffers have termed sugar rush. The vibrant colors, swirling images, and dance beats create a dreamlike state in even the most grounded of individuals. Hyperglycemia begins to feel like a clear and present danger. For all of this, though, it isn't considered an unpleasant experience. Many visitors give in to the urge to smile and subtly sway to the beat, but everyone feels a pleasant mixture of nostalgia, hope, enthusiasm and rampant giddiness. Escape is offered via the stairs to the left or the elevator to the right. After all, there are 3 more floors to explore. The elevator doors open to the 2nd floor where the lobby's color scheme continued, though considerably more muted. It can't have the staff overdosing. Just around the corner is the agency's cafeteria, where we find a rare sight in the woman-dominated agency. Along the lines of discovering a white rhino, Sasquatch, or a Republican who pays their fair share of taxes, we observe 2 males in the wild of Glam Doll Wonderland. One is an art director, Dirk Jeffers. For the uninitiated, an art director is responsible for the creative vision of the advertising. Think graphic designer on steroids. Deep into his 20s, Dirk is married with his first child on the way and dresses every day like he's going to a Nickelback concert. He and his girlfriend graduated from Howard University, a historically black college and university in Washington, D.C., and promptly moved north and west as soon as they were handed their diplomas. Art directors are often teamed with a copywriter, the person who creates the messaging. This is advertising agencies speak for saying they write the words. Liam Brody, the male lead in our story, is just past the midpoint of his 20s. Gifted with a generous head of dark hair and a ready smile, he's a good 20 pounds over his college weight. As one might suspect, he's not thrilled with the result of his sedentary lifestyle, but not enough to actually do something about it. Making responsible decisions hasn't been his forte. Not surprising, ladies, he's single. Liam and Dirk have been paired together for the past year. You have to be shitting me, Dirk looked at his friend and partner with wide eyes. I shit you not, Liam leaned back in the chair across from Dirk. His Converse is up on the table. You told the client for the nation's largest chain of wings restaurants that you were more of a breast man? Dirk studied his friend's face for any sign of deception before bursting out laughter. This was the sort of laugh that had people stopping whatever they were doing, wishing they were in on the joke. Liam couldn't help but join in. Yeah, I was off that account the same day. Deservedly so, Dirk said, shaking his head. You got more balls than brains, my friend. No, just the 2, same as you. Liam wiped away a tear of laughter. Not even remotely the same. I think they're playing in the same league. I don't think they're playing in the same league. Are you saying mine are in the Grapefruit League? This set Dirk off again. Several people stuck their heads in the room, curious what the ruckus was about. Dirk gestured to Liam, prompting the 2 women to shake their heads and leave. I guess we're not appreciated, Liam said after the stunning brunette and her blonde colleague left. He recognized the brunette as the newest member of the agency's account management team. Some people need to get a sense of humor. Dirk studied his friend before continuing. What'd they say when they kicked you off the account? Liam shrugged. You know, the usual, that I need to take things more seriously. Maybe a jab at my lack of professionalism. Well, Dirk began. Well, what? Liam folded his arms. You know you're my friend, right? And I think the world of you. Liam nodded. You're out of college and in a career that most just dream of. Maybe you need to take life more serious. Be more adult. Liam shook his head. Nah, it's my childlike wonder that makes me so good at what I do. How do you think I come up with such creative concepts? Can't be messing with what's been working so far. So far. If Dirk's warning registered, Liam didn't let on. Besides, it helps with the kids. Oh, today's the day, isn't it? It is. Liam looked like someone realizing today was the day of his dentist appointment. I can't believe you're going to coach a bunch of middle school girls in soccer, Dirk said with an air of disbelief. I never would have pictured you as the coaching type, or the athletic type, if I'm being honest. Liam narrowed his eyes. What are you saying? Holding up his hands, Dirk shrugged. I can't picture you on the soccer field, or running. Are you calling me fat? Never, at least not to your face. You're just not the most athletic specimen I've seen, that's all. Well, for your information, I used to play in college. I wasn't half bad either, at least until I did my knee. And that was several years ago, so I'm completely healed. Dirk shook his head. I just don't get it. Why would you want to coach soccer, let alone middle school girls? How hard could it be? And besides, it's just for 6 weeks. I can do anything for 6 weeks. But why? It was Liam's turn to shrug. Let's just say I'm doing someone a favor. Dirk's eyes narrowed. And who exactly are you doing the favor for? Liam let out a sigh. Someone who I can't refuse. There's nothing else to it, Liam said, knowing full well there was more to it. So there's the first chapter. And the basic premise is the beautiful brunette that had walked by ends up having to share the same middle school soccer field. And they obviously start grading on each other pretty quick and start detesting each other. But like any true rom-com, you know that's going to change. I think one thing that's interesting about how I write is some people will type into the computer, some people will write by hand. it Rick Riordan? Am I pronouncing that right? I heard he writes with a big quill, even just for the effect of it. I do both, but for the last one, I've been writing by hand in a notebook, and then later I'll dictate it using the dictate feature in Word and to get it into the computer. It's just I found I'm more expressive, and I can write in the margins and do all this kind of stuff with writing in a notebook, and it seems to go pretty fast. One thing I've noticed as I've been writing more and more, revisions are kind of the key to things, because maybe you're not hitting a home run right out of the park. I know that Stephanie Meyer, when she had her first draft, someone had hacked and stole it for something and put it out there. She never released the book after that, because the first drafts, they can really change from, because you're finding your voice, you're refining it, you chop out a fair amount actually. Though I'm having the opposite problem I'm noticing in the rom-com one. I'm coming up short on my word count, because I'm probably, for that genre, I'm probably looking for 65 to 70,000 words, and right now I'm probably 55. So that means maybe an extra scene or two, maybe I introduce a new character, beef up descriptions, you know. It'll take a couple revisions to find that. One thing that I've had a lot of fun with is the character naming. I usually put something in the books that mentioned that, you know, any resemblance to a living person is meant to be a compliment. There was one of Andrew's friends, his dad one time sent me an email and said he was reading Killer Blonde and came across his son's name in the book and fell off the couch. He was surprised. So, Cade, the character in there, that's our other sibling was Cade. Andrew will show up someday, don't worry.
Yeah.
Well, you were in that time travel one, but so yeah. But usually I'm looking for names like I coach soccer, so all my girls tend to show up in the books. You know, just find people. You know, throw names out there. It makes it a lot more fun for me.
Yeah.
I may not use their last name, may not even use their personality, but it's fun to put those names in there. I was asked the other day about reviews. Do I read my reviews? A lot of times, no. Case in point, I think there was a review for Killer Blonde, and it's a thriller. And thrillers are different than mysteries. And this person was perturbed that I gave away who the serial killer was before the end of the book. But a thriller, a lot of times that's the whole thing. You know who the bad guy is, and it's the battle of wits, it's the race against each other, and that's where the drama and the excitement comes from, not the mystery of it. So I think, but you can't answer someone who does a review, and like, okay, push that aside. So I'll occasionally read some, but and it's funny because I'm just going to pull up one here. I just got one like 2 days ago. It showed up. There it is. I became instantly interested in Killer Blonde by Allan Evans because it is a police procedural novel featuring a serial killer. I love both of those topics, and Killer Blonde did not disappoint. It was action-packed and kept moving along at a good pace. The characters were well-developed and felt real. I enjoyed how the interactions between characters were realistic, and the banter between the main character, Cade, and his partner, Rob, didn't feel forced or weird. I wasn't too surprised to find out that the author has worked in the investigative world because the police work was on point, at least to my non-officer viewpoint. I read a lot of books featuring serial killers, but this one had a unique twist that I thought was pretty cool. I'm not going to give away anything, but the actual hero of the story blew me away. I love the ending. Hopefully there are more Kay Dawkins novels to come because I will definitely be reading them. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
That was nice of my mom to write that. I don't know actually who that was, but I guess we're at a point where I throw it out there if you guys got any questions.
I did have a question. I kind of watch like documentaries about serial killers often, but
Excellent.
I kind of notice like a correlation between like the socioeconomics of the time and like political like voting times. Because I notice serial killers are like with like political campaigns or affiliated. Do you notice like or get like or do you think like that's what shapes certain serial killers like the way their surroundings and where they're being formed, maybe that's what's causing them to act out and kill people.
So you're wondering if they're all Republican? I'm just teasing. 100% teasing there.
But I mean, yeah.
You know, I think there's actually a pretty good correlation there, actually. You know, a lot of it's there. Again, you know, we talked about the orbital cortex. You know, they're deficient in that area, but I don't think everyone that has that deficiency is automatically one, and I don't think everyone that has had, you know, abandonment by parents has become one. It's just one of those. It's the environment. It's the psychology. I think it's all those different things. I think maybe for some, it just might be they have more motivation to do it. Maybe they have the opportunity where there could be other people out there that are putting those urges out there and just featuring their bad skills on small animals and things like that. I know the FBI just came out and said they are actively looking at possibly multiple long-haul truck drivers right now being serial killers.
Yeah, pretty good way of getting place to place without. No, yeah, it could. Yeah, that would be an interesting.
And then it's not weird why they're there in the first place.
There is like stuff about like certain like stories that are not like produced out there that are like stories about like the black market and human trafficking and stuff.
Oh yeah.
That could be a thing.
I was surprised. I feel like there was a criminalized episode about like
Mhm.
truck driver. Like there was truck driver. That sounds so scary.
It's scary. It's a scary thought. It's a scary thought that people can, their brains can formulate like that.
Where did you come up with the whole web black market plus making paid visa target? Like, how did you come up? I feel like there's just so many pieces to it, but it all like connects perfectly.
I've heard that part of the creative process is that boredom factors in. Like when you're bored, your brain has time to kind of work in the background and starts to make some of those connections. And I think probably, I don't know about you, but if you spend time on a treadmill, it's not exciting. And maybe that's why that idea came to me, just like thinking through, like, okay, if I'm going to go more of a serial killer thing again, like, you know, it's just another one that's here, or it's, you know, what would bring another one here, maybe to go after the main character, and then probably that's where I got the idea, like, you know, well, the dark web, I actually never checked out the dark web, honestly, but
Probably not a bad thing.
Yeah,
probably not a bad thing.
Actually.
I know how to do it now thanks to research, but
Sure.
but I mean, even like Facebook and New York Times, they've got black web type versions of their publications.
Really?
Yeah,
No idea.
because there are people that just they don't want to travel the regular way. They want to travel the path least traveled, maybe. And, I think there might be privacy issues too for people, because the dark web is really secure that way. And it's all the legal crap that's on it, but yeah. So the original idea for that book, though, was you've all seen the movies with an elite assassin. You know, what about the ones that maybe are not so good at their job? They're kind of average. They're worried about their next performance review as an assassin. I thought, wouldn't that be fun if one of those comes to town and is kind of bungling his way through things, so he's harder to track as he does his thing because he's making a mess of things. I thought that would be kind of an interesting premise. So that's where I was going, and I had an international mayors conference come to town, and so there would be mayors from all over the world, good targets, right? And that's why this killer was here for an assignment, but he's starts listening to other people, and
You could still write that book at a later time.
that's the next one in this series, by the way. I've gone back and been working on it. It's called Killer Instinct. So probably halfway through, but I pushed that aside for a little while I've been working on the rom-com. Because sometimes you just need to break and push it aside. So. Mike, you got a question?
I was just curious, you know, you talked about before about Ludlam was one of your favorites. Does that influence you writing about and setting it in the cities where you know all the locations?
That is a good question. You know, I've put it sometimes, you know, some scenes in other places, and you just got to research. Like one of the books I'm going to be shopping on in Chicago next week is a domestic thriller set in Paris. But I've visited Paris, and I had to go back and do a lot of research, you know, online. I should probably make it tax deductible and go back out again. But, yeah, I think that does have a lot to do why I said it here. And I think that might be a John Sanford influence as well, because most of his prey books have been set here in the Twin Cities, and you just feel like you know the places, and like you know where Lucas Davenport, what area he lives in, and like you almost half expect to see him if you're driving around there, because it's always felt that real. And I've got a lot of feedback from people that they love. Like, oh, I know exactly where this is.
Right.
You know,
That's true.
people really like that.
Yeah.
There's a connection there, that's
Yeah.
for
I
sure.
mean, you know, I literally spent a weekend in Zurich once looking for the Ludlam sites from the Born Identity.
Oh,
And
awesome.
it's a pretty cool experience, and so in Minneapolis, so I'll try the first book, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of see what you know and what I know, and it's pretty kind of fun. I think a lot of people do like that location specificity where it's real.
Yeah.
So you should go to Paris, by the way.
That was where the honeymoon was. So actually, in that book, which tentatively is called 7 Nights in Paris, the premise on that one, by the way, is two couples from Grand Marais. They go to visit Paris on vacation, and shortly after they get there, the main character, her name is Harper, and her husband's there, and it's his brother and his wife. That other wife disappears right after they get there. And Harper firmly believes it's the husband that's responsible, because back in the town of Grand Marais, he's just seems like he's abusive and power hungry and just downright nasty, and people don't want to cross him there because they're afraid of what might happen. So she's thinking, well, I can't do anything when we go back home because he's got all the power, but he doesn't have any here in Paris. How about I frame him for this?
Oh, I like the name Tyler.
So she reaches out to like intelligence service there, and that's where the Robert Ludlam stuff comes in, because she's been a huge fan of him growing up. And so hopefully that one does well. The other book, by the way, I'm going to pitch there is called Anomaly. It's probably either upper middle grade or young adult one. About 15-year-old boy, Henry Davenport from White Bear Lake, who firmly believes he's adopted because he's tall and thin and is worried when the wind blows. His family is all built like fire hydrants. And, so his sister says, look, just take one of the DNA tests and you'll know you're Scottish like the rest of us. So that's what he does, but the results come back. And part of it says it's labeled as anomaly. He's like, what does that mean? It's like getting an unknown blood type. It shouldn't happen. But right after that, he also notices that he's being followed,
Oh,
and then some unusual abilities start to manifest themselves.
cool.
And that one's totally set in downtown White Bear Lake. Kind of almost wanted to make that place a character in the book.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Did you have like a favorite character to develop? Like what one that came out like
That's a great question.
totally different than you had expected or started?
I think in the rom-com, Liam Brody, that's his name. He's been a fun character to write because he likes to get on a high horse and make speeches and that are kind of go off on tangents and get on a soapbox and yeah. So that one's been really fun to write. But also that assassin guy, he's been really kind of interesting to write as well. I do. But yeah, man.
We took all of it.
No pressure though.
I can
I don't know, I'm just
whatever you have.
I'm just super excited about the sci-fi one, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know if you have any questions there.
I have a question. Do you have an estimate when the one after this is coming? Like, which one's the next one after this that you're gonna release? And do you have an estimate?
I'm guessing the Killer Instinct one would come out in 2025, but I gotta finish it first. You know, it takes a few revisions. So typically that revision process, you finish it, you gotta push it away for a week or two probably, just to let it sit there for a little bit, and then come back to it, read it through. Now that you know how it ends, you can start to think like, well, this, when I mentioned this, it really doesn't lead anywhere, so maybe we take that out. Or maybe because you know how it ends now exactly, you can start to pepper in some like allusions to things that are gonna happen and references that.
What's the favorite thing that you've done for like researching like a character or a place?
Great question.
Well, I definitely like the ride-alongs. They were a lot of fun. For that time travel one, I actually went and met with the costume department manager at the Guthrie Theater.
I was there for that. Wasn't I? I think I remember that.
It was really a lot of fun to see how they do it, but I figured if you're gonna time travel, you don't wanna go back wearing today's clothes, right? So how do you go back to 1947 Chicago and fit in? Like, who would know that kind of stuff? I'm like, well, costume manager would know that kind of stuff, so.
That's brilliant.
So I did that research and met with her, and that was really cool, actually.
Yeah, that's
You
awesome.
learn all these things. Like, did you know in the place that all productions there that everybody's wearing a wig? Everybody, because they don't have to worry about doing their hair. They just pull it on and it's all set.
So even if it looks like their real hair,
Yeah,
they're just wearing.
yeah.
Okay.
Didn't know that.
Either.
Little tidbits, yeah. Yeah, you just pick up on all this little stuff. It's really cool. You know, I'm talking to people that way, but you know, also are. I mean, if people looked at my browser history sometimes, they might really worry about me.
I was thinking about that when you mentioned Googling like you're on the dark web.
You know, you learn how you do it, but you know, it didn't need to find its way into the book, so it didn't.
Do you have like a bucket list research event or people you want to meet or research?
It's all specific to the books, but like, so the rom-com one, for instance, it was all the worlds I knew, you know, because I worked in ad agencies, and I've been in middle school, and currently, actually, I'm a middle school soccer coach. So, you know, that just took from what I knew, and I think it makes it a lot more authentic that way. But I think, you know, putting some more exotic locations is kind of, it adds to the scope of the book for one, because as much as it's cool to have it like set in a small town or, parts, but the greater the area covers, the more scope it has, and feels like it reaches a larger audience that way too. So, yeah, maybe London, maybe definitely some other locations would be really cool.
Would you worry about writing about those locations without visiting them, or you would always kind of visit them?
I feel like you'd want to visit it. So another, you talked about keeping like a wish list of things. I'll keep documents of like story ideas and stuff like that. And usually when I have a idea for a book, I'll start to flesh it out, and I'll keep a notes doc for it. And so it'll list the characters as I flesh them out. Plot points. I'll start collecting quotes even that could fit into there to add some spice to it. There's a famous blues song called Manish Boys, and I thought that would be a great title for a book. And the idea was, and Andrew and Mikhail, they were at this crossroads in life where one was going to go join the army and the other one was headed off to MIT. And they decided to have a last weekend hurrah in Chicago hitting the blues clubs. So the idea for the book would be that every chapter would be a famous blues song, like Hellhound on My Trail, or all these different ones, and kind of pick up that theme of that for each of those chapters. And the whole idea was they go down there and after they meet some girls and have a couple of drinks, they decide that this music is dangerous music for dangerous people. And then maybe with alcohol involved, they're thinking we need to do something dangerous. And then there's a fine line between dangerous and stupid. So I think they cross that line. And then the rest of the book, they're trying to recover from that. I think like Adventures in Babysitting, how they, they're trying to just come back from something.
Yep.
And so that's an idea that's in progress. I'm keeping that document. I'll keep going back to it. And at some point, I need to get down to Chicago, tour those blues clubs, really get that feeling, and then I'll start that book.
Sober is better.
Sober?
When you're touring, I mean.
Oh yeah, for sure.
2 in the morning in Chicago.
That would cross the line into stupid quickly.
There you go.
We have time for one more question, unless we're feeling
Didn't you go to an abandoned insane asylum to study or to research a book?
Yes.
Okay.
You probably would.
Yeah.
I feel like I got a call
Yeah.
from that.
So there's
It was sick.
in Anoka, there's a former insane asylum that's there, and they gotta have a catacomb of tunnels underneath that go from building to building. Some of those buildings are boarded up and abandoned, and some of them are one's like a workhouse for Anoka County, and there's some like halfway housing in some of them, but the others are abandoned and looking oh so creepy. And that would be a good place to set something. So
Yeah.
that will be a location in Killer Instinct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.